Family businesses. It is something I'm very familiar with, being in one myself. But even if you're not, they actually have a really significant impact on local economies, the employment market, and the communities that they're part of. According to PwC, family businesses represent 70% of the global economy. In Asia, in particular, family businesses have actually shaped contemporary capitalism in the region. Russell Reynolds actually reports that 85% of companies in APAC are owned by a family group, and of the top 750 global family businesses ranked by revenue, over 20% are Asia-based. Right now, family businesses in Asia, which are generally younger than their Western counterparts, are going through a generational shift. 30% of them are expected to go through this change in the next few years. But what unique attributes give family businesses an edge? Why do family businesses, for example, according to a recent survey by Carmignac, tend to outperform their counterparts in terms of returns on capital? And what can everybody in the room, whether or not they're part of a family business, learn from that? So joining me on stage today are two very distinguished gentlemen and two family friends of mine. Mr. Binod Chaudhary, chairman of the CG Global Corp, a multinational headquartered in Nepal. They have a portfolio of over 160 companies and 123 brands, and they employ over 15,000 people. Today, they have an interest in quite a number of things. Get this: FMCG, electronics, education, cement, energy, hospitality, realty, financial services, telecom, biotech, engineering, and construction. I have that right? Aside from being a highly successful entrepreneur and business leader, Binod is also a philanthropist, a politician, and the author of the book Making It Big, the inspiring story of Nepal's first billionaire in his own words, which is a must-read for any entrepreneur wanting to get ahead. Also joining me is his eldest son, Nirvana, who is Managing Director of CG Global Corp. Nirvana is also Vice Chair of the Chaudhary Foundation. He became Managing Director at 30 years old and is a former national squash player, aside from being an artist and a musician. And he has a great podcast called, get this, Making It Bigger. Thank you both for being here with me today. So why don't we start by talking about where are you both spending your time these days and where do you overlap? Shall we start with you, Binod?
Thank you, Tamara. First of all, allow me to present my compliments to you and Michelle and the entire Gen T team for a brilliant show that you put up. I think it's very timely.
Thank you.
A big hand.
Although we're not here for me, we're here for you.
Many more to follow with new dimensions, as I was talking with Michelle over lunch. Going back to our subject, you know, what we believe, and this is going to be something very interesting for many of you who are directly, indirectly connected with anything to do with the family business or legacies. You know, we believe in our parts of the world that the first generation builds the family business, second generation consolidates it, third one destroys it.
Okay.
This is a typical phenomena. And I think you've already given some statistics on what is the total overall impact of the family-run businesses, family-owned businesses, which also perhaps need to be segmented into different structures. Mm-hmm. There may be family-owned businesses which are run professionally. Okay, there may be family businesses which are run by the family members. Okay, so we'll come to that as we go forward. It's not an easy issue to address because probably it will require what is your ultimate end goal as, let's say, as the senior team of the ownership. What are you looking at? Just growth? Mm-hmm. Or the growth with perpetuity, mm-hmm, beyond your lifetime, beyond the lifetime of your next generation? Mm-hmm. I think that's a very important subject which takes the center stage. We'll come to that. As far as two of us are concerned, we overlap quite a bit because his headquarters is also Nepal, mm-hmm, unlike my other two sons. And I spend a fair amount of time in Nepal. And we have our own share of interesting conversations from both ends.
What areas of the business are you both currently focused on?
I don't run businesses. I basically run three of them.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the secret behind family businesses. Done.
That was on a lighter note. When I say run, meaning we have always, one has worked for 45 years, so one is all the time watching what is happening and trying to sort of shift the goalpost every time and sitting out there to preempt some of the things which perhaps they don't see it that same way. I think also having shifted my focus from business to a large extent to philanthropy and now into politics, because I believe that that's, if you are sincere to your cause and if enabling environment help you, that's the only way you can make a big difference to a large chunk of people.
And that's
country.
also quite unique to family businesses. A lot of family businesses do have philanthropic work very much baked into their DNA, but we'll get to that in a second. Nirvana, what about you? Where are you spending your time these days?
Thank you, Tamara. So I'm spending my time in Nepal. I got back to Nepal after finishing my education in 2000 when I was just about 18, 19. That was the time when Nepal was going through a civil war, the peak of our, the war economy was at its low point, and I just finished my schooling from the West, come back, and I was super excited. And till date, I've been pretty excited about the potential in Nepal. Two very distinct things I'm focusing myself, leading on behalf of the family is, number one, me as an individual and then the family and the group, I think our purpose changed in 2015 after the Nepal earthquake. Till 2015, we were always driven by how do we become, one of the large multinationals around the world. We'd already become the Nepal's first multinational. How do we expand our business, beyond different continents outside of Asia, Middle East? But after 2015 earthquake, we realized that instead of taking Nepal to the world as a multinational, there was so much. In 2015, about the 8.7 Richter earthquake that happened that took lives of 10,000 people in Nepal. We realized at that point, and my father and I were in our industrial park. We were having our review meetings, and we had two choices at that time. Whether to get all our family members and all the staff towards where we were, or us to go to the place where people were most were having problems. And we decided the latter. And in 3 hours of the earthquake, we opened up 16 of our schools into relief camps. Because we're a food company, we were able to provide whatever quantity, food, beverages, water, anything we had to the people that were affected. Because we had over 2,000 people of our sales network on the ground, we knew exactly the family and the houses that were damaged or destroyed or affected. So even organizations like UN were using our data points for calculating it. 15 days after the earthquake, we were able to build the first transitional home. 1 year of the earthquake, we built and gave away almost 5,600 homes, 55 schools, 22 digital classrooms, 20 clean water drinking systems, rebuilt a village that was completely destroyed with 120 permanent homes, community center, and trained 7,000 people. So that 1 year, 2015, I think for the family, changed the purpose of our group's focus and growth. That now we wanted to grow even faster because there was so much more to do in our country, so much more to give back to our country. So I'm particularly, I'm very passionate about the work we're doing in our foundation. I think along with my father, play a lead role in driving that. So that is something I continue to do. That's everything that we are doing is built upon by that purpose. And the second very distinct thing is, there were these conventional businesses that were started by my father, like FMCG or consumer durables. I'm taking those businesses into retail, e-commerce, bank. Started digital bank, fintech products. He started with, petrol, diesel vehicles. I've got into big way into electric vehicles. Then the entire ecosystem of power and grid connectivity, etc. So just with the time, taking the group to the next level of businesses where the world trends are going to. I think these are the two things I'm focusing on.
And you also have plans for an IPO very soon.
So, yes, we
It's
are
the first
thinking.
time.
Yes, we're a privately owned company, 100% professionally run. The need for the discussion of IPO is that, we are always investing and operating in countries where, forget about multinationals, but even business houses in those countries don't want to invest much. For example, when there were missiles going on in the airport in Sri Lanka, we were signing a deal with the Taj Hotel for buying out a dozen of hotels in Sri Lanka. And the people were like, have you guys lost it? There's a war going on. But, similarly, I can give you 5 other examples. Wherever there's been chaos or war or some conflict, that's where I think the entrepreneurial gut feel comes in, by meeting with the people, interacting with them, and seeing a longer term version of the country. So I think as a company, we're always invested in these very challenging economies. And for some reason, we've always been very shy dealing with financial institutions and raising debt.
Right.
But now that we want to grow fast, the cost of equity is always higher than the cost of debt. Right. So whenever we go to the banks and we've got investments in Kyrgyzstan or Ukraine or Sri Lanka, etc., they're like, okay, we trust you, but we don't trust those territories.
Right.
So you're like, you got to trust the entrepreneur and back him up.
Right.
So we are yet to come up with a financial institution who sort of gives you that confidence. And we tried talking to few of them, but I think we decided that, we've got companies which have solid cash flow, solid potential growth. Why not unlock the value of the potentials?
Right. That's the reason behind it, because you want to be able to grow even faster. But since you do have a lot of what we can call risky sort of ventures, then it probably makes more sense for you guys to go IPO. And that's going to be the first time that you're going to be doing that in the history of your company. Isn't that right? But you touched on a really interesting point. Let's talk a little bit about the family philosophy and approach to business, because I find it really interesting. I know the Chaudharys quite well, but Binod, would you like to start by explaining how do you approach business and how do you view growth and ambition?
Okay, let me supplement to what Nirvana was talking about, just very briefly, on the IPO side. I think the business has evolved across many geographies, and what was not so attractive yesterday has become attractive. So as an overall portfolio, we feel the time has come for us to take many of our verticals for an IPO, maybe Singapore, maybe Abu Dhabi, maybe India. So we are working on that. We are working on our food company to go for IPO, for our financial services vertical, which owns banks in Nepal and Sri Lanka, to go into for an IPO, our telco to go IPO. So that's going to be the future, So no question about it. So that we are not confined to the challenging emerging economies, but we have a right blend. It's all a question of risk and reward. I mean, you may enter Sri Lanka or Ukraine or Kyrgyzstan at a tough time, and that's where your rewards are. And it's not always correlated with the risk and reward profile. You are sometimes in for unbelievable upsides. I mean, it happens to us recently. We bought a telco in Moldova, which is neighboring Ukraine, for instance. And over the last 3 years' time, it's performed in an extraordinary manner. And now Moldova is in the process of becoming EU, which nobody thought. And
Way
because
back
of the
then.
war, that
Yeah.
whole process has been accelerated.
Yeah.
And
But
today you're talking about a different scale.
Yeah, but you've developed a reputation for that, for going into the markets that no other sane businessman or investor would touch. I mean, you've said this before. You said you've made investments and you've made moves that no traditional investor or businessman or any sort of like PwC or consultant would ever have supported. And you do that because you operate very much on gut and intuition.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
I think that's true. That's true even for the, the better performing economies. At the end of the day, at some level, it is the gut feel, I've always felt, that comes into the play. Now, talking about the family legacies or, working with the new generation, to my mind, the most important capital that you have is your next generation. Otherwise, why are you working for it? Why have I been working for the last 45 years, day and night, to build, an empire, so to speak, in our own modest way, across all the 5 continents? Because we want to leave a legacy behind, and for that, the successors need to be trained. And it's not like sending every child to a school for training. Entrepreneurship, to my mind, is to a large extent, that skill comes inborn. You have to be born with it. Everybody need not be an entrepreneur. Some may have some sense of entrepreneurial kind of a interest, acumen, but then it can be supplemented by putting them together with the other rest of the family members.
Right.
I think it's important to give them freedom where it needs to.
Yeah.
And it's also important, like I was talking over lunch, I think with Maggie, part of your team, that what is important when you talk of the putting together the next generations, the platform, the structure for the next generation. Why families fail in doing that?
You make a really important point, and I think Patrick also highlighted that in his panel this morning, where he was talking about all the glorification of being an entrepreneur. And Binod's basically saying, if I may paraphrase, that you don't need to be one. And sometimes it becomes the end goal in itself, but you may not be made for it. You may be made to partner with other entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And it's a question of having that humility to understand what you can bring to the table and what you cannot. Nirvana, what have you been learning from your dad?
So before that, I'll just tell a small joke, right?
Sure.
Once a father comes to his son, and tells him, "Son, you've been working so hard. I'm so proud of you. I'm promoting you to the general now." Son's like, "Wow, thank you so much, Dad. It's so kind of you. I feel so proud. What about you, Dad? What will you do?" Don't worry, I'm just going to be a major, in the army, the general major." "Okay, Dad, what will be my role and what will be your role?" "Since you're the general, you make all the general decisions. Since I'm the major, I'll make all the major decisions." So that was on a lighter note. But I think, frankly speaking, I sort of feel entrepreneurs are not born, but they become entrepreneurs when they're in this particular environment that is just infused with just a lot of entrepreneurial talks, and you're constantly discussing issues revolving on entrepreneurship and growth and all. And I think in our family, since the age of 12, while coming back from boarding school, instead of going out with friends, a lot of times I still remember coming and just sitting in his boardroom and just observing, from a very, very young age. I frankly speaking, I didn't even want to get into business. And he'll tell you the same thing when he didn't want to get into business. We both, I think, we landed up, I started playing squash because he started to. I started making music and writing music because he was a singer too. I was very, very inclined into movies and cinema because he produced a movie as well. So, we've come in from a very creative area, but I think what we've done is over a period channelize that creativity into business. And I think that's what really distinct us into recreating business and having that, that satisfaction that I could turn something out of nothing. There's nothing known as a place where, I don't think I've ever come across a time where we've got a business and we've failed. We've made it work no matter what. I mean, his focus is, if there's a business which is $10 a month or a business that is $1,000 a month, but if the $10 business is not functioning, he spends like he really goes after us
But
day and
yeah, you
night
have a
to
slightly-
fix that $10 business.
Yeah, but
you
when
know.
we talked about that, I think the way you explained it was slightly different. It's that we always talk about how you need to, you need to make mistakes, people need to fail to become entrepreneurs. And you mentioned to me that in your family, there's no such thing as failure. If you get into something, even if it's broken, even if it doesn't work, you just fix it, and failure is just not an option. Yeah? Would that be a fair,
Yes, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, while making decisions, you can fail. But there is no, never in the history of group have we ever sold a business or closed a business. We've come up with a new model where we understand the geographies really well and we see a sectorial opportunity. So we've gone to a model where we partner with companies that understand sector. That business model is doing very well for us. But us as a business, I don't think we really do businesses or have come across businesses where we are like, you know what, we have to shut this down. We somehow do a calculated risk, take a longer term approach, get the right people in, and we are at it till the time it succeeds.
Well, there you go. That, I think, right there is one of the major advantages of a family business. It's that long-term view coupled with an entrepreneurial vision, which is something that you don't see a lot in a lot of non-family businesses or publicly listed companies who have a lot more of a short-term perspective on it. Definitely a huge advantage. What are other characteristics that you think give family businesses an edge?
May I?
Yes, please.
I think, first of all, you don't have the option. You know that you don't have the option but to take the company or the family and set up enterprise to the next level and hand it over to the next generation bigger and better. I think that commitment, which comes as a part of the responsibility to a large extent, if you are the one who's inheriting it. But same times, I think the stake makes you, because you have absolutely, in your hand lies the future of the thousands of the people, the dreams of the generations who have passed by, who have worked hard, the personality and let's say, the value of the brand that has been created over the years. It's a huge responsibility that you have on your head, and you want to make sure that it works no matter what you need to do. I think it's a question of a completely different level of commitment, because there is buck stops with you,
Yeah.
and you don't have the choice to quit because that far too many people's interests are connected with you. Secondly, I think it's all about passion. That's what I've seen. That you mentioned, I've got 3 sons, and they all work on different verticals, in different geographies. And I've found that that's something, if you constantly, systematically, consistently work with them, you can impart with that. I think you have to make sure that your next generation enjoy the fruits of success. As they say, there is nothing that succeeds like success. You got to create a situation where they are seen as doers. They are seen as people who have achieved it, and that's the single biggest asset you can give to your next generation.
So these have formed very important components of the way you've been building legacy, the way you've been building your sons, including Nirvana. It's giving them that opportunity to be seen for their own successes, to give them opportunities to fail to a certain extent, but to succeed in many, many ways. Yeah. I'd also like to ask Nirvana, how is it working with your dad? And you've gone on the record at other events on this, so I know the answer.
No, I not because he's my father, but he is seriously, one in a billion, according to me. And trust me, I really enjoy. I've been blessed to have spent time with, all the way from people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jack, some of the most successful entrepreneurs I've spent a lot of time with, and I've taken few traits or leadership style of theirs. But I think with him, it's very, very different. It's all of that put together in one. I always joke around and tell my brothers that, I think he could make, if Maradona trained under him, he could make Maradona, or let's say Lionel Messi trained under him, he could make Lionel Messi like Warren Buffett. He would make sure that he would set the right benchmark or the right guidance or the right environment where he would start channelizing that skill into business. So I think it's very tough. His stand, every time we feel we've reached that goal, again we've seen that the benchmark goes higher. And I guess deep inside, not that he's told me ever, but I think deep inside he feels a little bit of that, okay, I'm proud of these guys, but he knows that his duty is to keep pushing our potential, because unless he sees our potential, how is the organization going to grow? How are we going to grow? And I think, but all of this is revolving around the fundamental values that we've grown up with, and things like humility. I think that's the single biggest value our family has, which we've learned from our not only from my parents, but even from my grandparents. Compassion. Even before CSR or philanthropy as a organized division or a entity came in, we were already philanthropic as a family from the last 50, 60 years since my grandfather's time. So learning all these values, learning how to be frugal when you need to be, learning how you need to be.
Yeah, that's true, because a lot of family business tend to report much leaner cost structures than their counterparts, because it's our money that we're investing, right?
But you have to, at a very young
differently
age,
about it. Yeah.
Young age, understand the value of money. There were times when, because of the environment we've grown up in, there were times when I had, we were given access to the best credit cards or whatever, but we used to always think 10 times, do I really need to spend that? Do I really need to do that?
And so you apply that to business as well. 2 questions. One, so all of these things that you're talking about this commitment, that one thing that makes family businesses so strong is that emotional investment, that commitment, that passion that you have. If you are not part of a family business, is that possible to replicate? Can an entrepreneur replicate that in their own businesses? Binod?
Well, I think somewhere it has to start. I mean, if you look at the recent trend, most of the big companies globally are started by the first generation businessmen. They had no background in terms of any family inheritance. These are all new ideas. It was all power of idea backed by the technology, connectivity. You talk of any of the tech companies, which is, and you see that trend going on every day. So the issue, I think the narrative also is now beginning to change. I mean, I can talk about, the Apple, okay, or for that matter, Microsoft, okay. Bill Gates seems to be moving out of that company, and there is nothing called the family legacy, but the company seems to be performing better. I think it's also beginning to be driven by the new trends, the new technology, comparative advantage, which probably someone from outside brings in better than what the company otherwise has inherited. So I think this is becoming a very interesting discussion. I mean, on one hand, we say that the family businesses still, continue to dominate the economic world, and there is a much better return on investment, much better, bigger sense of emotional as well as financial commitment to it, okay? And they are seen as not only contributing to the national economy, but also to the society at large. Some of the big philanthropists that you hear about, that you talk about, come from the family businesses, okay? But on the other hand, there is a set of new tech companies, new companies, new generations, which is bringing in new ideas to the table, and which is run completely differently. A bunch of young people, they come together who bring in different sets of skills. Maybe one of them was the entrepreneurs. They work together and that becomes a billion-dollar company. And in the process, everyone becomes a billionaire.
Right, right.
I think that's the trend. So we'll have to yet to see what happens to the next generation of, what happens to the succession of leadership in these companies.
Right, right. Nirvana, the family is very much about this gut feel of entrepreneurship, and you embody that as well in your philosophy and your approach to business. How do you hone that sort of gut feel, that intuition? How have you honed it? How has your dad taught you to hone that? How have you learned to hone that on your own?
I think between him and me, we've got an understanding that if I have a particular approach or a particular if my decision is something else and his is something else, we'll go inside a room and either he'll convince me or I'll convince him. But when we get out of the room, we'll be talking about the same thing.
How often do you win?
Always.
I think it's all about, that's a very interesting question you asked right now is, so for example, if I want to start a new business venture and I see the potential to reach 1,000, but he'll agree to letting me start that, but he'll only let me do it till the point of 100. Because I have to prove till 100, and then he'll open the door more for 200. And then only let me go. But I'll be frustrated that I could have easily got to 1,000. So I think there's a balance where we do it, and it's fine. Because sometimes, let's say at least in my generation, we get too excited,
Yeah.
impatient,
Very
and try to
impatient.
do something. And I think that's where wisdom comes in, experience comes in. That I think all his decisions are around, what if this goes wrong? What if the worst happens? He's always talking about that. I'm like the eternal optimist in our organization.
Sounds like a great team.
So
sounds like a
yeah,
great
I
team,
think
though.
once you're able to collaborate like that, then sky's the limit.
So he's teaching you to pace yourself, basically.
He's teaching me almost everything.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Almost everything.
And a last question, because unfortunately we're out of time. Nirvana, how are you like your dad?
You always say that you either lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? And I've tried to carve out my own individuality, but in not only in our within our family, but even in our country, and to some extent, in the region as well. He's done a phenomenal work to reaching where he is, not only in business, but now he wants to transform the country. So someone with such personality, I get to learn so much from what it is. But at the end of the day, I learn a lot. So out of 100 things, probably I'll pick up 99. But there'll be one or two things which I will do it my way, which I think that is because of how he was running the management style 40 years ago and what needs to be done today. I think there's a management style difference, but the end goal is the same.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Binod, any last words about the legacy you want to leave your sons?
No, I'm extremely happy. It has not been an easy process, When one has to, probably for those who are interested to understand how we are handling the issue of perpetuity, because I'm repeating this word for the second time, because just passing it on is not important. It's about, it has to go way beyond the second generation, third generation, and beyond, which means you are building an enterprise which should last for perpetuity. How do you do that? Everybody is not blessed with the same skills. Everybody is not the entrepreneurs in the family, okay? And everybody may like to take the group forward, but may not have the ability to do so. And they don't like that to be told. Okay, so how do you do that? So you have to give freedom where it is needed. You got to put structures whereby the benefits of being in a joint family, they are not sacrificed. The entrepreneurial strengths of a family are not given up, and yet the process is carried out in a structured, professional manner. And that's a very difficult thing to recast, but you can do it. I think that's what the essence of running a successful family, on the family side as well as on the business side, lies.
Fantastic. Well, some words to live by. Thank you very much to Binod and to Nirvana.